All right, today we're diving into a masterclass on critical thinking. But our teachers, they aren't philosophers, they're lawyers. We're going to borrow their incredibly powerful mental toolkit to see how legal logic can seriously sharpen our everyday thinking. But first, let's start with a question I think we've all faced. Why are so many of our discussions just so unproductive? At work, online, even just at the dinner table. We end up talking past each other, things get emotional, and we almost never get to the real heart of the matter. Why is having a good logical debate so incredibly difficult? Well, a huge part of the answer lies right here, in this split. Over on the left, you've got our default mode, right? That fiery, emotional reasoning that's all about gut feelings and hot takes. And on the right, that's the goal, the cool, mechanical logic of critical thinking, built on evidence and structure. That huge gap between the heart and the head, that's exactly where most arguments just completely fall apart. So to bridge that gap, we first have to understand the core of the problem. And the thing is, our brain's default setting, well, it just isn't designed for the kind of deep, critical thinking we're really aiming for. Think about it. Our brains are wired for survival, for making fast, good enough decisions to keep us safe. And that's fantastic if you're, trying to avoid a predator, but it's not so great when you're trying to dissect a complex business strategy. This basically creates a need for a system, some kind of framework to help us override those messy default settings. And that is where our solution comes in. I want you to think of legal training not just as something for the courtroom, but as the ultimate mental gym for building serious cognitive muscle. This quote just nails it. The real power here isn't about memorizing a bunch of laws, it's about mastering a process. It gives you a framework to approach any problem, literally any problem, with clarity, with rigor, and with structure. Okay, so that sounds great, right? But what does thinking like a lawyer actually mean in practice? Let's break it down into 3 core skills from their toolkit that any of us can learn. So our framework is built on these 3 pillars. First, we're going to learn how to cut through all the noise. Second, we're going to challenge our own assumptions, big time. And third, we're going to ground our arguments in cold, hard reality. Let's unpack each one. Let's start with skill number 1. Isolate the issue. You see, in any disagreement or problem, there's just a ton of noise. Emotions, side arguments, totally irrelevant details. A lawyer is trained to just slice through all of that and ask one simple question. What is the single fundamental question we are actually trying to answer here? Just defining the problem like that is half the battle won. Okay, now for what is maybe the most powerful and, honestly, most misunderstood tool in the entire kit, arguing both sides. Now, this isn't about being tricky or deceitful. It's about intellectual honesty. The rule is simple. Before you're allowed to have an opinion, you first have to be able to argue passionately and convincingly for the opposite opinion. This whole practice actually has a name. It's called steel manning. And it's the exact opposite of what we usually do, which is straw manning. Attacking a weak, silly version of an argument. Steel manning forces you to build the strongest, most intelligent, most persuasive version of the other side's case. A quick way to try this? Just ask them one. So, if I'm hearing you right, your strongest point is X. Is that correct? It forces you to see their view in its absolute best light. So let me ask you, and be honest with yourself. When was the last time you actually did this? I don't mean just nodding and saying, I see your point. I mean you genuinely tried to build their case for them, to feel its persuasive power, to try and win the argument for their side. It's an incredibly humbling and eye-opening exercise. The final skill in our toolkit is reasoning from precedent. Now, in a courtroom, this means looking at past rulings. But in our lives, it means grounding our arguments in established facts, in historical examples, in real data. It's all about asking, okay, what's happened before in similar situations, and what can that teach us? It anchors your thinking in reality, not just some abstract theory. So there we have it, our 3 skills. But this isn't just some abstract legal theory, right? The real question is, how do we take this toolkit out of the courtroom and actually put it to work in our day-to-day lives? This, right here, is where it all clicks. Each one of these legal skills has a direct parallel in our everyday decisions. That tricky negotiation you're planning for a raise, that is all about isolating the core issue. Debating a really big purchase, like a car or a house, that's your chance to really argue both sides. And that huge business proposal you're looking at, well, it's only as strong as the data and the precedent it's built on. You see, the logic is totally universal. And this brings us to maybe the most crucial point of all. The goal of learning to think this way isn't to become some unbeatable debater who wins every single argument at the holiday dinner table. No way. The real prize here is clarity. It's about making smarter, more reasoned, and way more confident decisions in every single area of your life. So let's wrap this all up and deliver the final ruling. What's the one thing you should really take away from all this today? Here it is. First, critical thinking is not some magical talent that you're either born with or you're not. It is a skill, and just like any other skill, it can be trained. Second, the framework of legal logic gives us a fantastic, time-tested workout plan to do it. And maybe most importantly, you can start practicing these skills, isolating the issue, steel-manning, reasoning from precedent, literally today. So I'm going to leave you with one final question to get you started, and I want you to really think about this. What is one core belief you hold, something about your career, your relationships, maybe the world, that you have never, ever genuinely tried to argue against? Start right there. Because the answer to that question might just be the first step in completely rewiring the way you think.